Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello. Just for a moment, I just want to say welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. We hope you'll enjoy the Mount memorabilia and streaming photo display on our TV screens. We're sure that you'll enjoy the food and drink and also some brief remarks from each of our speakers who have had a close relationship to Dick. I'd like to thank my co-hosts who helped to put together this day, Kit Bowery, Deb Thompson, John Trotter, and Juliet Turner. It's gratifying to see his friends from all of Dick's favorite places: Longwood, Quincy Tennis Club, B&T, Sportsman's, Tenacity, and his favorite bank, Citizens, where he was asked for a lollipop with every deposit he made. I'm sure you noticed Dick's Chickmobile sitting out front with his prized buffalo named Olafab. Check with all of us who are hosts. We'll be happy to relate the story behind that trophy. And for those who can't decipher the meaning of Dick's license plate, it means tennis anyone. That was Dick's mantra for sure, on any day and at any time. Have a bite to eat. In about 15 minutes, I'll introduce the speakers. Juliet, myself, John, Deb Notman, Magnus, Bill White, Rich Griffin from Quincy, Tony Wiley from Sportsman's, and two special guests from Sportsman's, Kyle Denny and Gianna Barnes. Dick loved Sportsman's and wanted everybody to know that he hoped that people would contribute, if possible, to Sportsman's in their effort to build the Richard Mount Bang Board in his honor. We can't think of a better tribute. If you look in the hallway just outside the welcoming area on the left, you'll see Phil is waving at me. If you where Phil is waving, if you can see him in the hallway, there's a layout of the Sportsman's Club, and it denotes exactly where the bang board is going to be. So we think that's fabulous. So take another 10 or 15 minutes, have something to eat, have something to drink, of course. There's going to be some hot past hors d'oeuvres in a little bit, and then in about 15 minutes, we'll have some speakers come and talk. Just a few minutes each, so you won't get bored. But we all have had different relationships and different anecdotes about Dick's life, so I think it'll be really interesting. Okay? Thanks very much, and welcome once again. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Could we calm down a little, please, so we can hear some really interesting talk? Hello, everybody. Cool it, please. Thank you. Thank you. So we would like to have a few speakers, very short, so he won't be bored by different things. But everybody's going to talk a little differently about what Dick meant to them and to the whole tennis world, an example. And we're going to start off with a special guest from Hollywood, and Juliet Turner, who was one of the people who was very, very big in Dick's life for many years. So, Juliet.
Good afternoon, everyone. There might have been some miscommunication. My name is, and if you know who I am and what I meant to Dick today, please raise your hand. Okay, there's only a... Oh, you can't hear me? Is that better? Okay, I'm not Juliet today. I'm this person, and if you know who I am and what I meant to Dick, please raise your hand. I saw a couple. Most blondes would know this person. And if you don't know who I am, I hope you'll take time today to meet some new friends and to find out about my relationship with Dick. But I did promise Dick many years ago that not only today would I suggest everyone have a Scotch Old Fashioned in his honor, but that I would tell everyone, in case you didn't know, and later you might see some slides that I put together, that Dick was a head cheerleader for Dartmouth. Dartmouth was a very important for him in his life. And today I'm not going to lead you in the wahoo wah cheer, but I'm going to lead you in a cheer. We're changing. In a different cheer for our friend. So if you will join me with an original piece of equipment that I found at Dick's. This is his Dartmouth megaphone. Give me a D. D. Give me an I. I. Give me a C. C. Give me a K. K. What have we got? Dick.
How do you follow that? Someone from Hollywood who knows Dartmouth and knows how to cheer. That's pretty difficult. So anyway, I'm going to say a few words and then I'm going to call each of the people who are speaking up. Who was this man, Dick Ma? A life defined by daily habits. His day started with a morning walk, feeding squirrels and chipmunks with acorns, which he conveniently kept in a bag in his kitchen. Breakfast followed by feeding the birds popcorn and watching what he called his dive bombers eat the treats. Next, keeping his brain active by doing Sudoku and crossword puzzles. And then a quick drive over to Longwood to hit 400 shots on the bang board. Or some more tennis, always on clay. He detested the grass courts. A few sets, some lunch, then off to the Star Market parking lot, where he looked for license plates which contained an X. Can't leave yet, can't go home yet. He had to find at least one car that was red, one white car, and one blue car before he went home. A light dinner, perhaps a laboriously typed letter on his beloved Selectric typewriter, and then watching war movies until he fell asleep in his chair. If he had dinner at a restaurant planned, he doffed his pristine warm-up suits, and if you know what he looked like, they were the opposite of that. And like Superman, he emerged from the house clad in a natty outfit featuring a colorful tie. Boy, did he love those evenings with the ladies at Capitol Grill or Aquitaine. But most of all, he loved teaching youngsters about tennis. He rejoiced in their successes and consoled them when it was needed. Although he never had his own children, they were his family, and for that we should all be grateful. The bang boards are silent. No shouts of "lucky banana" can be heard. But his indomitable spirit lives on, and we should all be glad that we knew such an extraordinary man. Even on his last day at the hospital, weak but not silent, he was on the lookout for companionship. He asked a group of female doctors and nurses to show him their left hands. He picked the one who was not wearing a ring and asked, "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" That's our Dick. Thank you. I'm going to ask John Trotter to come up, if he will.
Thank you, John.
No, it's perfect.
It's great to see so many friends of Dick's here today. Thank you all for coming. Some thoughts about Dick. As we look back on our friendship with Dick, each of us will have different memories of him. There were shared experiences at Longwood, the Coral Beach Club, the B&T, Quincy Tennis Club, and in the Chestnut Hill neighborhood. You might have known him at Dartmouth College, or been coached by him at Nobles and Greenhouse School, or Brookline High School. Whatever your connection to Dick, you knew that he was passionate about tennis, the sport that bound him to his friends, people who meant even more to him than tennis itself. Tennis, anyone? Or perhaps I should say, iOS NE1. Dick's license plate provided a clue into what made him tick. What's that all about? I asked, shortly after seeing it the first time and meeting Dick at the B&T. Oh, someone else had already taken the T, so I just substituted an I for the T and an O for a ball, he said. Creative. As I was to learn, Dick was undeterred when he had a goal, and if it meant coming up with something unusual and imaginative to reach it, he did. Who else would play tennis for 24 hours non-stop at Longwood Cricket Club to raise money for youth tennis? Or hike 26 New England mountains to correspond with each letter of the alphabet? Or drive for 2.5 months to play tennis in each of the lower 48 states, again to raise money for youth tennis? All of these feats lead us to conclude that our wonderful friend truly cared about others. According to the USTA, there are now more than 1.1 million tennis players in New England. Given his 30 years of coaching and teaching the game, Dick must be the reason that countless individuals now enjoy tennis and love sharing it with others. So when I think of Dick, I remember his many acts of kindness during our long friendship and the difference he made in the lives of all who knew him. What a legacy he left us. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Well said. We're going to have a couple of people who hadn't been on the schedule, but since they came, and I'd like to sneak them in for a very quick chat. A fellow who's right in front of me who was Dick's classmate. Hard to believe because you look pretty young.
You know my epic.
And he's also got another very funny anecdote that has to do with the letters of the alphabet. Thank you. Bruce Alexander.
Very quickly, Dick, I come from Milton, and I was chairman at Cunningham Park Foundation, which is a 110-acre park in Milton. And Dick went to the selectmen in Milton because he was trying to find the letter Z for all of the mountains or hills that he was going to climb. And he went to the selectmen and asked them if they would name Adams Street, which is a high point in Milton, with a Z. And the selectmen decided not to. But I heard about it, and so as chairman at Cunningham Park, I invited Dick over, and as chairman, I renamed the highest point in Cunningham Park with a Z. And he finished his job and raised more money for youth tennis. So that's my start.
Thank you, Bruce. If you haven't seen it, this is Dick's map that Juliet Turner laid out for him as he went around the country without a GPS, not knowing how to use an iPhone, with no particular plan. This is kind of impromptu, but his original plan was to buy a station wagon, and he was putting a mattress in the back, honest to God, and he was going to drive from place to place and sleep in the back. Juliet and I pled with him and said, please don't do that. And John, don't do this, Dick. Try it out one night. He tried it out one night and he immediately went to a rental car and then planned on staying in hotels. So that we stopped that. Since we have moved into the Dartmouth arena, I think Bill White would like to talk a little bit, since Bill has a long relationship with Dartmouth. In fact, after this party later on today, there's a Dartmouth reunion that he's running here. I'm sure there are a bunch of people staying over for it.
Well, I met Dick in 1981 when I joined Longwood and the B&T, two of Dick's favorite organizations, and we hit it off right away because we had a Dartmouth connection. In 2004, the consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton published a study to identify the world's 10 most enduring institutions. Two of them came from higher education. One was Oxford, and for all you Harvard types out there, I'm sorry to say the other was not Harvard. It was Dartmouth. When you think about it, it's not surprising that the Dartmouth brand is so strong. Over the years, you take 3,000 to 5,000 undergraduates, you put them up there in the cold North Woods. They're on the banks of the Connecticut River, the beautiful New Hampshire Upper Valley, with a lovely campus and few distractions. The result is the students focus on immersing themselves in the college community. It breeds strong bonds, lasting friendships, not just for 4 years, but for 40. In Dick's case, 70. His classmate Bruce is here to attest to that. Now, of course, Juliet mentioned that he was the head cheerleader at all the football games, and he was perfect for the role. This was back in the early 50s, of course, and I just want to describe his outfit. He had moccasins. He had buckskin breeches. His upper body was dyed red with a big green D on his bare chest. And he'd lead the cheers and whip the crowd into a frenzy. One last thing about Dick. Some of you might think of Dick as a typical frat boy. And a perpetual frat boy. In his case, there's actually some literal truth to that. On campus, Dick was a proud member of Theta Delta Chi. He was the class of 55. I was the class of 67, 12 years later. And my friends in Theta Delta from 67 knew all about Dick. He was an institution at the house, because for years after he graduated, he would come back for all the big weekends, house parties in November, winter carnival in February, and Green Key in May. And every time he'd be accompanied by a different pretty woman. But just think of the scene in the Theta Delta basement at the, say, 1967 winter carnival. We got a bunch of 20-year-old college kids dancing, jumping up and down, shouting Gloria, Gloria at the top of their lungs. And in the middle of it, you have a 32-year-old IBM executive. That was Dick. So if there's one thing I know that Dick learned about at Dartmouth, it was how to have a good time. And as we all know, he continued to practice those skills for the rest of his life, right up until the day he died.
Thank you, Bill. Terrific. Right now, I'd like to introduce some special guests. Sorry. I forget names pretty quickly. But we have a contingent of people from Sportsman's, and they'd like to talk to us a little bit about Sportsman's and what they do and what Dick Mount has meant to Sportsman's. We have Tony Wiley, who is the executive director. We have two special guests, Kyle Denny, who looks like $1 million. He's dressed up in nickels. and Gianna Barnes. The three of them are going to talk a little bit about their experiences at Sportsman's and Dick, and we welcome them up to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Wiley, and I am going to very quickly turn the microphone over to two of our young people because they are really the reason that we're all here. Both of them have spoken at our gala, which typically has 700 people, so I'm sure they're not too nervous, but it doesn't hurt to have them see a smile when they look out to the crowd. So please welcome Gianna Barnes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to speak about my time at Sportsman's Tennis and Enrichment Center. While I did not have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Dick Mount, it is comforting to know that his contributions and dedication to the sport of tennis helped pave the way for players like myself. Sportsman's has long been a home away from home for me. With their support, I have had the opportunity to participate in many meaningful events and celebrations. Had the pleasure of making diverse and hopefully long-lasting friendships and grow into a team player and community contributor. Some of my favorite memories at Sportsman's include playing at the Sloan Stephens Invitational, attending the yearly neighborhood gala, and attending Volley Against Violence, which is a program that brings participants of all ages together to help and learn from each other, and of course, play tennis. While I didn't personally know Mr. Mount, I'm sure he was one of the friendly faces I saw in the lobby or watched on court in between my own matches and practices. It is so wonderful to see everyone here today to celebrate the life and legacy of this generous gentleman. On behalf of Sportsman's Juniors and the Excellence team, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Denny. I'm a junior at Milton High School. I was asked here today to talk about my experience at Sportsman's, and I'm sure Mr. Dick Mount had a wonderful time there. I started going to Sportsman's when I was in kindergarten. My mom would take me there for tennis lessons. Back then, I was playing more casually, but then I stopped and came back when I was 11. When I started at Sportsman's, I learned how to play tennis later than most kids. Coach Marcel, one of my first coaches, believed in me and encouraged me. He trained me in tennis and helped me improve. One time he got me over my fear of the ball and had me rally with a college student. That day I learned to be more confident about my ability to hit the ball, even if it was coming to me at a fast pace. He was my biggest cheerleader, who inspired me to keep playing even when things were tough. Through his coaching, he saw improvement in me. He helped me reach Tournament 3 tennis and to start playing in tennis tournaments. I had made a lot of progress until COVID hit. During that time, my parents wouldn't let me play tennis. However, once I was vaccinated, I came back to Sportsman's and was happy to be back at my home away from home. Even though there were new coaches, I was still supported by the Sportsman's staff. Coaches Tay and Martone became my new supporters. Tay helped me get back into tennis. Martone helped me with consistency and get me back into tournaments. With their support, I was able to get ready for high school tennis. I had practiced enough so that I could earn my spot on the varsity team during freshman year. They saw me grow up into the tennis player I am today. Although I realized Sportsman's is more than just tennis. It taught me to be more resilient through difficult times, and that the best way to silence my critics was to play tennis well. It is more than just an outlet for me to be competitive at a sport I enjoy. It is a place where I can learn not just tennis skills, but also life skills. While I only have a year left of tennis here, with the things that I've learned and the knowledge of tennis, I can continue playing during the rest of my life. This is why I would like to thank Sportsman's and its staff for everything it has done for me, and everything that it will continue to do for young and old tennis players many years from now. Thank you.
Well done, Kyle. Thank you. Oh, sure. Mary Long.
So I had the pleasure of getting to know Dick through racket donations. So everybody knows Dick would say, "Do you need a new racket? What are you gonna do with your old racket?" Well, what you did with your old racket was pick up the phone and call me. He'd say, "I'm heading over." Get in the car. He'd drive to Sportsman's, blow the horn. Then we'd run outside and grab the rackets, and he'd say, "See? I got you some good stuff today, didn't I? Long story made short, we invited him to come to the tennis ball one year. And I had an auction item in my possession for 3 years. And it was a cowboy signed print by Benjamin Knox. And honest to God, Dick saw that and fell in love with it. He said, Mary, what do I have to do to get this print? I said, well, I definitely go ask at the original bid. He said, all right, let me think about this, pacing back and forth in front of the painting. And all of a sudden my daughter came running up to me and she said, Benjamin Knox painting is gone. Dick Mount has put a bid on it, a very lovely bid on it, and it's gone. It's not going back to your office. So I went up to him and I said, thank you so much. He said, this picture gives me so much joy. It's going to remind me of this wonderful night that I'm here, enjoying Sportsman's and your kids. And, you're going to deliver it to my house and we'll hang it together. And lo and behold, I delivered it to his home. We found that special place. Mr. Gallagher tells me it's still on the wall. So who knows? It may be coming back to Sportsman's after all. So thank you. And thank you for sharing your generosity with our kids.
So I want to say, I can't say that I knew Dick as well as most of you here, but what's clear to me, there are two things that are very clear. One is that Dick certainly knew how to bring people together. We're all here, many of us are here from different tennis facilities, and as I understand it, there used to be a really close relationship between the Sportsman's kids and the Longwood kids. And I know that Dick had a lot to do with that, as did many of you here. I know there were bus trips to the US Open, there were all kinds of shared experiences, and perhaps this is Dick's way of bringing that tribute back and that closeness back. I'll also say that Dick knew how to get things done. He came into Sportsman's one day and he said, you guys don't have a hitting wall. Everybody needs a hitting wall. The kids need a hitting wall. He said, I'm on the Youth Tennis Foundation at USJ New England, and I'm going to make them give you a donation towards the wall. And I said, well, that's great, but we don't have a place for it right now. So he said, yeah, but I'm going to give you the donation so you can put the wall up. And I said, well, we really don't have a spot for it. So it went that way for about 20 minutes of him saying he's giving us the donation and me saying we don't have a place for it. And at the end of it, we got the donation, and it's been sitting on our balance sheet for a very long time. And so, as many of you know, we're now in the midst of a capital campaign, and the first phase is about putting a building on 4 of our outdoor courts. And the second phase has a lot more. It's going to increase our classroom space, and it's going to give us a bigger fitness center, but it's also going to give us 2 outdoor courts. And we are, of course, going to put what out there? A board. And we are honored to name it after Dick, and all of the contributions raised here today are going to go towards that. So we are really grateful to you and to Dick for knowing how to get things done. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Well said. We have a speaker here who is coming up now, who spent 19 years as Dick's assistant at Brookline High School. Those were 19 hard years, I'm sure. But most of the time they had a lot of fun. Dick was an inspiration to girls from freshman year to senior and helped them grow as people and as players, more importantly as people. And Deb was with him. They used to play here frequently as well. She is wearing some Brookline High regalia right now. Please give her a little room because she's got a couple of little issues, but she's okay. So here she is, Deb Notman. She was the assistant tennis coach.
Hi, everyone. Come this way. Come this way.
Walk this way. Walk this way.
Come in front.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. We'll try again. Yes, I was Dick assistant from 1995 to 2013. And we were quite a pair, as you might imagine. It was like having your head coach with a grandfather who had no children, definitely no daughters, and the mother who was a mother of 2 daughters. So the high school, I guess, thought that we were a pretty good pair to be able to handle the young ladies who would come every day on the train from the high school down to the public tennis courts. I'd like to describe to you how Dick ran tryouts. First of all, we had at least 50 or 60 girls come every spring to start, because at Brookline High School, you could never be turned away from trying out for a team. So the girls would all pile in, and I have to tell you that Dick also brought a lot of rackets. So did I. I had extra tennis shoes. There were all different kinds of apparel that the girls came in. But of course, they all wanted to try to get on the team. Now, with Dick, those of you who do know him well realize that he loves statistics. Remember his Christmas card? He would hand to me a poster board at least as big as that had on it all 50, 60 girls' names, down the left side, down the right side, and they were to play each to try out. You had to play everybody else, although eventually, of course, we didn't have time to play everybody else with 60 girls. 10 games, 10-point games, excuse me, they were 10-point games. While this went on, the 5 courts that we had, so picture 10 girls playing, 40 to 50 girls were on a 6th court with Dick, standing in a line, and when they got to the front of the line, their job was to try to hit 20 with the coach. Remember that phrase? 20 with the coach. And if you made it, you of course got to come over to my side of the other tennis courts and play the 10-point games. Meanwhile, while they stood in line, he taught them how to shuffle the ball back and forth across opposite sides of the racket and how to pick up the ball off the ground, because most of them didn't know how to do that. It was quite an adventure. Tryouts, needless to say, were lengthy in our case, but we usually made it. And also, I should let you know that almost every spring, since we started tryouts in the middle of March, our first job as head coach and assistant was to clear the tennis courts of lots of snow and ice. This year obviously didn't pan out. Anyway, it was a great adventure. We all missed Dick so much. The last thing I want to say is that he was such a generous man. Even though he never wore the clothes that Brookline High School asked us to wear, except for the very first jacket that he was given the first year, and you all saw him in that at various times, whether at Quincy Tennis Club, when he came over every morning to clear those courts before he came to Brookline High School to coach the tennis team. Every year, the end of the year, no matter if you made the team or not, you were invited for a pizza dinner, pizza or pasta dinner. First few years, it was at Woody's next to the B&T, which you all remember. And the last few years, because it was too complicated to get everybody down to Woody's, he would take over the Bertucci's in Brookline Village, table after table. And by the way, he came in coat and tie, very nicely dressed. I, of course, was still in my Brookline High School outfit, and usually what they would do is set up a table that stretched the length of this room practically, Dick at one end, Debbie at the other end, and he would buy dinner for everybody. And the girls' responsibility in all of this was to bring $1 for the tip. He was a great guy. We certainly miss him, and these last couple of years, as he was more strolling around Longwood and languishing over different things, Dick and I would often sit out here on the way to the bang board. And actually, I was sitting there, maybe needle pointing or doing whatever, and Dick would go by me, hit his few balls that he was able to hit, especially last summer. And then we had a special chair for him to come back and sit down in, and we would talk about things, whatever it was. Mostly Dick would just talk. Anyway, it was a privilege, and we surely do miss him. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Debbie. Some of us actually had the pleasure of living near Dick, so it was easy to see him on a regular basis as he walked up and down Hammond Street and all around. So he was a great guy. We've got one more speaker. We have Rich Griffin, who is the president of the Quincy Tennis Club. You don't have a banana tie on or anything, but that's a good tie.
But you told me 2 or 3 minutes, so 10.
It's 10.
Oh, I'm only kidding.
Well, thank you. I want to thank, first of all, everyone here is lucky to have known Dick. I know he's with us today and smiling. Beautiful memories, about the beautiful memories we're all sharing, right? So, on behalf of those of us from Quincy Tennis Club, thank you to Kit Bowery, John Gallagher, and the folks here at Longwood for inviting us here for this special celebration in honor and memory of Dick, all right? Well, if I could, Blue Collar Quincy Tennis Club, club that we are. We have a lot of presidents, and there are some past presidents here. I'm the current president. Just if you raise your hand alphabetically, the folks that are here: Mike Kenny, good friend of Dick's, Jim Rugby, okay, Joe Ryan, Bob Yee, and John Zarnock, and hopefully I didn't miss anyone. And so thank you all for coming. Not here with us today, but alive and well and now living in the South is another past president, Jim Haviland, who summarized much of what Dick's contribution to Quincy Tennis Club was, all right? And I'm gonna read that for you just so I can get my formal part of it done here. Quote, as a longtime Quincy Tennis Club member and a former club president, I am well aware of Dick's many contributions to the club. Yes, he was a highly skilled player, but more importantly, he was a people person in the best sense of the term. Always upbeat and positive, he was always fun to play with and to talk to on the porch. As an instructor, he ran a highly successful program for juniors. As club manager, he kept the courts in top shape daily during the playing season. And while he had many accomplishments on and off the court, one feat will never be equaled. His arrival by helicopter on the historic Longwood courts on the 25,000th match before a crowd of friends and admirers. So thank you, Jim Haviland, for those memories. Can we hear it for Jim? Really off script here, but I'm hearing a lot about the Sportsman's Club. So anecdotes being what they are today, I can tell you that at one time I worked for Reebok, and Reebok had under contract Venus Williams. And John Zarnock, again, past president, raise your hand, John, and I were one day walking through this grand entrance at Reebok, and there, standing all by herself in civilian clothes, was Venus Williams. So being tennis lovers, tennis players, we approached her, we said, we're so glad you're part of the Reebok team. Can we have a picture with you? And of course she obliged. She was very gracious. She was lovely. And there was no handlers with her or anything like they are often in this sports world. So being involved with Quincy tennis, loving the red clay of Quincy, I invited Venus to come to Quincy to play tennis on the red clay. And for a minute she paused and I was saying, oh, don't tell me. Yeah. She politely refused and said, oh, I have other obligations. So John and I, after work, we got out a little early, played some tennis at Quincy. I'm watching the news that night, and who's on the news at the Sportsman's Club with a bunch of little children? Venus Williams, right? So that's a heartwarming thing, and I just want to acknowledge that. The other thing I'd like to acknowledge is two of the members of Quincy Tennis, Paula Jabian and Jim Rugby, the Milton High School tennis coaches. So is it Dwayne, was it? Kyle, there you go. So there's a relationship there too with the Sportsman's Club. Right? My only other play, when I played there, I killed myself on those hard courts. All right, so the other things that Dick was noted for at Quincy was his youth program there. A couple years into his tenure as a club manager, he decided to have youth tennis at Quincy Tennis Club. And geez, did he have it. He took over 3 courts in the middle of in the early morning, in the middle of the morning, where he had children sign up. Now, the Quincy's rules were if you played there, you had to be a member. So the children had to play like $30 to be members. So that was great for the club. But he had about 100 kids out there over 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, and he made it so much fun for them to enjoy themselves out there. There were some really little kids. You could call it a babysitting clinic, perhaps. That there was this one girl, I've heard this story, I gotta thank Earl Rudkin for this story, that a friend of his says his daughter was one of these children out there. And what she remembered was the thunder showers that happened every day. Well, it was so hot and humid out there that Dick would take the hose and spray them and scream, "Thunder shower, thunder shower." And the kids all loved this, you know, they loved getting wet, then they went back to play and all. This happened to all the kids. Fast forward to recent times, this young woman is now a freshman at North Quincy High School and has been invited by the varsity boys coach to play tennis there. She stayed with tennis. Another one of our members, Andrew Bisconti, was another young player who's under Dick's tutelage. He learned how to play with Dick. Dick would bring the other kids in as they got older and have them work with him. And so he learned how to play tennis like Dick. And back then, Andre Agassi, all these guys who hit the ball hard, Dick just showed the basics of tennis, made it fun. Andrew went on to win championships through Quincy and elsewhere, enjoying the game. So you're right, he really did love children's and propagating the game of tennis. That's one of our thoughts there, okay? As a Quincy Tennis Club manager, hardworking guy. When I used to work, I'd drive down Newport Ave going towards Boston in the morning, and Debbie, you mentioned his suit. He'd be there in his sweats with the towel around his neck, maybe rackets in his hand. He'd be walking down, if he had to take the T, he wasn't driving to Quincy, get to the club early to open it and to groom the courts. Right? That was another impression I had. You know, working my corporate career, there's this guy that was that club, and he'd be there all day. And he was a nice guy until you did something to the courts he didn't like. And then I don't know how many presidents remember how many times he quit because of what he did to the club. You know, he hated calcium chloride and etc. All right. Also, for many years dedicated, what you'll see over on the table there, for as many years dedicated to the game of tennis and tennis lessons and children, I think he charged like $5 for a lesson for an adult. So the board at the time determined that he was such a great contribution, he was such a good guy, and the people loved him, to dedicate and rename our court 5. We have 5 red clay courts. Court 5 is the Dick Mount clay court, Dick Mount court, and there's a, I brought the sign for that, all right? Now, it was one of the gentlemen mentioned his, well, certainly we knew he counted everything, but the letter Q. So someone mentioned license plate, letter X. Mike Kenny tells me the story. He was fixated on the letter Q on license plates in Massachusetts, but there were very few of them here. So when Dick traveled to Florida and spent time with Mike and his friends, on the ride from the airport to the condo, he saw a lot of cars with Q's, and he went nuts. And he drove Mike nuts. And that whole, vacation there, he obviously wrote down all of that, how many times he saw the letter Q. In the past year, I saw Dick up on the porch up at Quincy Tennis Club, and I guess I was on it. If it was the Holy Grail, he had his spiral notebook into which he wrote everything he counted. And I mentioned this to Kit, and Dick said this before. Yeah, people think I'm crazy. I write down everything, the number of times I walk around the pond, the number of times I hit the ball. But it's when he got up in the morning, it gave him a lot to look forward to for that day. All right, and there's a lot to be said to that. All right, and in our game, because it's what I do when I wake up in the morning. I look forward to what I'm going to do along the lines of tennis and all. All right. We all know about Dick's relationship with Roy Emerson and the wonderful party and the time they had here at the 25,000 set. So I guess I'm going to wrap this up by a little formally here saying, the members of Quincy Tennis Club in Longwood have shared in many of Dick's events and adventures. 3 of the most memorable are his 25,000 sets here at Longwood, his 2015 induction into the New England Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island, and his Tennis Odyssey. And it was a 2015 induction. Those of us from Quincy who were invited were honored to be invited and participate. We enjoyed the cocktail party, the meal, then listened to Dick tell a few of his grandest stories, where I finally got to hear where Lucky Banana came from. Okay? So in conclusion, channeling, and with apologies to Dr. Seuss, I offer the following. An ode to Dick's Tennis Odyssey. On his tour across America, he had a very pleasant manner. He took each city like a veteran commander and played each match as a right-hander. I don't know if he made it to Montana, and I'm quite sure he didn't do it in Havana, though you might find him napping in a cabana. He might or mightn't have played with an Anna or Susanna, or got on the courts in Atlanta or Savannah. But those of us who knew him should consider ourselves a lucky banana. So, what a legacy, what a life. We miss you, Dick, we love you, and rest peacefully, because someday maybe we'll be courtside with you again. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. One thing that Dick, that Rich didn't mention is one of the many tasks that Dick performed every year was taking wheelbarrows of detritus from the Quincy Tennis Club, which he tracked. How many wheelbarrows a season? It was thousands by the end of the season, at the beginning of the season and at the end, among the other things. The only thing that this wasn't really sad, we were all smiling about it. On the very last day of his life, among his other things that he was doing, he was reminding us that he had gotten to 29,900 sets. And he turned to us and he said, I don't think I'm going to be able to hit that last 100 sets to make 30,000. But we said, you know what, Dick, you've had a great life. You have great friends all around you most of your life, and certainly the last few days of his life. And it was a really, it was a very emotional moment, but it was great to see him full of life up until the last couple of hours before he died. And he was Dick Mount to the very end. So thank you all for coming. Please stay and have some more drinks and food. But we all remember Dick with great fondness. Sorry, I'm sorry. We forgot one speaker. It's because he's going to give the speech in Swedish, and we're not really sure anything that he's going to say. But Magnus is going to talk about a few things about Dick.
Not really, but about a week and a half ago or so, I was doing some cleanup over at the covered courts, and I found something in a cabinet, and I said to myself, I said, Magnus, what is this? It was a poem, a beautiful poem that someone had hidden there, and I thought it was appropriate to could you move this laptop? To read it here today. It's pretty long, John, so you might have to give me a couple extra minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Granted. All right. So, here we go. Untitled poem by unknown, because maybe someone here wrote it. We'll see. All right. Since coming to Longwood covered courts, I've forgotten all of those other sports, because tennis is great in so many ways. After all, what else makes you giggle these days? Even when I really goof, like sending a lob right up to the roof, I think how lucky I am to be here, subbing for this team again this year. Being with friends is paramount, but also we have this fellow, Dick Mount. I think what makes him such a fine coach is his irresponsible, upbeat approach. His lessons are not full of hocus pocus. Instead, he's teaching us how to focus. Sometimes I have such trouble with instruction, I think I should go in for a brain reconstruction. But Dick will always come up with a plan that will give you the feeling, you bet I can. He works like a dog at practice on Monday to help you get better, well, maybe someday. For him, this must be as easy as pie. It seems to come naturally to this nice guy. But in his fun job, the only catch is he has to sit there and watch our matches. Imagine the stress, how hard it can get to see a smash go into the net. Get your first serve in, go up to the net, lob over her head. Now let's win this set. It must not be easy with all that suspense to watch us do things that don't make sense. But next practice, instead of a grilling, Dick always gives us some helpful drilling. So Longwood is really in the race, even with all those youngsters we face. So let's give credit where credit is due to our coach, Dick Mount, tried and true. Oh, it's funny, I found it about a week and a half ago. And if someone here wrote it, you can let me know. There's some pictures here too. I don't know who's on the pictures.
It sounds like something that Axel Kaufman.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Except Marion is here.
Magnus, he was our coach. at the covered course.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
When I played on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I get 2 more minutes?
Sure.
All right. So we heard a lot about Dick going to the backboard and hit 400. Larry and I used to be doing our lessons, and Dick walks by and he stopped for a little bit and watches us. And he walks down to the backboard and he hits his 400, and then he walks back and watches a little bit of our lessons, and he goes home. So what we're going to do this summer in his honor, we have created the Dick Mount backboard badge. Okay, so anyone who hits 400 against the backboard earns this. It's really a button, but badge sounds classier, so that's why we went with the button. But anyway, it doesn't have to be 400 in a row. It's just over the season, you're gonna 30 one day and then 30 the next day. Because John, I know when you get up to 230, 240, you get a little shaky. So it doesn't have to be in a row. But 400 in the season, go into the Longwood Pro Shop and you earn the Dick Mount backboard badge. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, please, yeah. One quick thing, right in front of the trophy case is a small silver bowl on the table, and you'll see there are these wristbands. Those of you who were here, those are the 25,000 wristband that we had here with Quincy Tennis and Longwood and the helicopter. Please take them because they were part of a lot of the junk at Dick's house. So, thank you again.